Twin Oaks' average length of membership is somewhere around 8 or 9 years average. Our longest term member has been here 36 years, something like that. Our newest member arrived, 4 weeks ago or something like that. So we sort of run the gamut everywhere in between. We do have a sort of a regular, steady-ish flow of turnover year to year. Somewhere between 10 and 40 members leave each year. And so that, you can imagine, has its sort of benefits and challenges. On one hand, with sort of a steady flow of new people, new members moving here, we have a lot of new energy, a lot of new enthusiasm, sort of people seeing the community, people who've been here a longer time, seeing the community through new eyes sometimes through these people, people with ideas for projects, things to do, new influences and influxes from outside. So that's all great. What can be hard is if that happens at a rate which is too fast. And a couple of things can happen. We actually do have a rule that we can't have so many new people arrive. It has to be so long between new people arriving to address those concerns. And a lot of that is about transmission of culture, because we are so different from the mainstream. And it's not just the fact that we, pool our income in these particular administrative bureaucratic ways. That's part of it. People have to understand how our process works, but it's more sort of on the day-to-day level, like living in your skin in this really different way of interacting with people, and what's appropriate in the mainstream in any given situation, from walking into the bathroom to how you greet somebody to how you account for the time you've spent working. It's all different here. And it takes time to figure that out and to accustom yourself and to acculturate yourself literally to that new way of doing things. And if people are sort of flowing through too quickly and too many new people at one time, it becomes much harder for that sort of, if you will, institutional information to sort of sink into people's beings and they can understand what it's really like. Remember, when I was a new member a long time ago, somebody said they thought it took 2 years to really learn what it's like, what it really means to live at Twin Oaks. You go through a yearly season once and it's all new and you get it and again. And when I hit 2 years, I thought, yeah, that sounds about right to me. What has happened at Twin Oaks in the last probably 2 or 3 years is, for some reason, who knows what that might be, we had a group of pretty long-term members leave within the course of maybe 18 months or 2 years, something like that. And this was a group of people who had been here a long time. They tended to have pretty, within our radical way of living, conservative and conventional thinking. They were often on the sort of pulling on the reins, resistant to change political side when issues would come up in the community. And they had worked in an area for a long time and sort of had, in a way, like a bit of a sort of an ironclad hold on that work area or something like that, and often were very good at what they did. And the way our systems are, you can keep working in an area as long as you enjoy it. There's no terms or anything. And so, as I say, for a variety of reasons, there wasn't one thing that happened that caused this, but different individuals made the choice to leave the community who were in that situation. And that was, and I think to some extent still is, being followed by a period of loosening up. All of a sudden, work that was once not available was now available because these spaces had been freed up. There wasn't this sort of more solid conventional political bloc, you might say, that would sort of tend to give similar input. We don't vote here, but would give similar input on a particular given issue. And so there was just more sort of freedom, more room to move, a little more, wiggle room for just people, for the community in general. And I think that's a positive thing. And the flip side of that is, the flip side of looseness is instability. And I feel like, I don't think that we went very far in that way, but I feel like to some extent those people did provide somewhat of a sort of a framework of groundedness and rootedness, and that now sort of just everything was kind of popping up and this and that and who knew, and it's not black and white, to be sure. And again, I feel like those are the flip sides of that. We did call it an exodus, to some extent. It wasn't huge swaths of the community, but it was enough people that it made a noticeable difference in how things worked here. So sort of myself as a long-term communitarian here, that was interesting to sort of step back and observe that. And on a personal note, it was pretty challenging for me because here were people who had put even more years than me of investment into this community, and they were making these other choices. Obviously, we're all free to make whatever choice about living here that we want at any moment. But just seeing them actively really make those other choices sort of pushed the idea further into my own consciousness that I could also make a different choice, which was a little bit threatening. Like, just, I can change my life. And it's easy to just sort of, things work so well here on so many levels. It's easy to just be in that groove and enjoying it. And it's not always easy. But so that was definitely somewhat challenging for me, that just psychologically sort of. The other thing I wanted to talk about membership is that sometimes it happens when new members tend to come into the community and they do have new ideas and new ways that they want us to do things or try things, and the people who've lived here a long time either have other ideas about how we've already done it, or they have more familiarity with our sort of decision-making process and political systems, and the both the overt and the less obvious ways, because that exists everywhere. And I do think that I think people wonder, oh yeah, well, don't all these long-term members, can't they just sort of apply that force and things don't change? And maybe that's true, but what I really think is whether you're a long-term member or you've just arrived here, there's a certain kind of person who has the idea and the vision and the passion and the drive for whatever it is, changing the way we garden or changing one of our economic structures, whatever it is. And so they need that idea and that vision and that drive, but that's not enough. What they also need are what I call the political navigation skills in order to, navigate through the political processes of the community, not necessarily to be charismatic themselves, but be able to understand the way the system works and guide their idea and their vision and the passion through that system. And some people have that skill, some people have it less, and that's regardless of how long you've lived anywhere, And I feel like in a way there's a sense in which that's more important than the length of time somebody's lived here. And there's a lot going on, obviously, but I do think having that combination of the vision and the skill, that's what's going to affect change. And I do feel like that's one of the great things about living here, is because of the scale we live on, this 100-person village scale, somebody who does have both of those things can affect change. It's very hard to do that. Out in the mainstream, you have some great idea, want to change how something works, you're up against some huge whole other system that way more than 100 people, or at least it's not the 100 people are the ones making the decision about. And so here, that's how we are able to, that's how we do change over time, is when those people do come here, the community responds positively to them, and we move forward. In terms of decision making at Twin Oaks, we do it with a few different levels. One is that each area here, like the kitchen and the garden and the hammock shop, has a manager, and they're responsible for the day-to-day decisions to make sure that area is functioning as it should be. And then sort of above that, similar areas are grouped into what we call councils. So there's the Agricultural Council, which has several agricultural areas on it. So those also have a level of decision making. And then for decisions that affect the whole community that are broader issues, we have a group of rotating 3 people called the planners. And there's always new ones, so they're staggered, so it's not all new people at the same time. And the planners, it's not their job. It's not like when you're a planner, it's like you're the queen or the king of the commune and what you say goes. It's not like that, obviously. Basically, it's the planner's job to, on a given issue, solicit input by community meetings, by papers, by surveys, by talking to people, and to gather the will of the group about that particular issue in that moment, and then make the decision based on that. And we don't do consensus as a community. It's not that every single member of the community has to agree with every single decision. Again, generally, some people want something like this, some people want something like this, and we end up with something like this. A few people on either end aren't thrilled, but the planners have done a good job of making a decision that most people feel satisfied by. And we do have a process that you can appeal. If you think they haven't done a good job, you can appeal it, but that almost never happens because we actually take a long time to make most decisions. Almost no decision needs to be made like that. And if it does, the planners have that power. But mostly it's more important to us to do a thorough job and hear as many voices as we can and incorporate their input than it is to just move forward and do something with speed. It's not worth the trade-off to us. And sometimes that can be frustrating if you're the one who wants the change and you're trying to make it happen. And we've done it this way since the beginning practically. We call it the planner-manager decision-making system. It's almost taken straight from B.F. Skinner's book, Walden 2, which we were founded on. We're not like that much anymore, but that's one piece we've kept, and it has served us very well over the years. Additionally, we have small groups of people who oversee various aspects, like we have the health team, we have the child board, we have the process team, to deal with different of those areas that need attention. And I'm just thinking about advantages and disadvantages. The advantage of what the planner-manager system, I would say, is that it can be as open as people sort of want to engage in it with. So the space is there for every member to give their input to practically every group decision, not necessarily every nitty-gritty small decision, but anything that affects the whole group. The choice is there for you to help shape that decision. And you know what? Not everybody is interested or wants, that's not what they want to do with their energy. And then it's also fine for you to opt out and you just go with what the group decides. And so it has that sort of spaciousness to accommodate different types of people, which we certainly have.